I knew something was off the second I saw the cake. It was one of those dry sheet monstrosities from the sad corner of Costco's bakery aisle, half frosted, misspelled, and sweating under plastic like it knew it was part of something shameful. "Congratulations, Susan," it read. Her name's Susan, always has been. That's how it starts. Not with a bang, but with a bad cake and a worse lie. Brent, slick as a broken urinal handle, and twice as full of shit, waited until everyone was stuffed into the rec room with paper plates before launching his ambush. He clinked a coffee mug like we were at a damn wedding toast. "I just want to say," he began, fake choked up, "Susan has been instrumental to Foresight Metrics. But we're evolving, and sometimes evolution means transition." That's when Max strutted in. Bleached teeth, tight pants, and the situational awareness of a houseplant. Brent clapped him on the back and beamed. "This is a family business now." The air went dead. You could feel it, a cold front of disbelief rolling through the cubicles. Susan blinked once, slow, like her brain was rebooting from a system error. "I'm sorry," she said, voice flat. "What exactly is my role in this evolution?" Brent smirked the way only a man can when he thinks nepotism is a personality trait. "Advisory capacity," he said. "Legacy knowledge. You'll be a lighthouse for Max as he steers the ship." Translation: "Here's a closet full of dusty responsibilities and no keycard to open the door." And then, God help us, Max looked at her and said, "Thanks, ma'am. Looking forward to learning your wisdom," and stuck out a fist for Bump. If you've made it this far, do me one tiny favor. Smash that subscribe button and give this a like, because 93% of y'all are out here listening without committing, and trust me, the team notices. Plus, keep stories like this rolling. Now back to the train wreck. They gave her a plaque, plastic, misspelled again, 10 years of dedicated services. Like she'd spent a decade unclogging drains instead of architecting their entire compliance infrastructure from scratch. Then they handed her a manila envelope and a pink sticky note with an HR email scribbled on it. No speech, no watch, no thanks. It was 30 minutes to clear her desk before Max started streamlining workflows. She walked back to her office, and found that her nameplate was already gone. Her computer had been logged out remotely. Her internal chat access, disabled. Her calendar wiped. Like she'd never existed, ghosted by the very system she built. But here's the thing no one tells you about the people who run the quiet corners of a company. They don't rage, they don't cry in the parking lot, and they sure as hell don't go quietly. They remember every file path, every clause, every contract version ID that Brent never bothered to read. Susan sat down at her personal laptop, fired up her external drive, the one IT never knew about, and opened a folder labeled redundancies. Max spent that morning filming a walkthrough video of the office for his TikTok. Called it day one as operations visionary. Hashtagged it #CEOin training. Meanwhile, Susan quietly loaded a folder named Legacy Binders onto a fresh USB drive. No need to rush. Let the frat boy have his 15 minutes. He had no clue he'd just stepped onto a minefield labeled Clause 9 at a station lock. She left without a word. No hugs. No "we'll miss you." Just the soft click of her sensible heels and the quiet hum of a woman who knew the real signatures still had her name on them. Brent, he thought he'd cleaned house. What he actually did was throw a match into the gas line. The funny thing about being erased is how thoroughly amateurs try to do it. Within an hour of Susan walking out with her box of sad office succulents and unused branded pens, her name disappeared like she was a glitch in the Matrix. Outlook bounced. Slack ghosted. Brent even had the gall to tell IT, purge her permissions. No forwarding access, like cutting off a limb and assuming it wouldn't bleed. By 3:17 p.m., her admin dashboard was locked out. The master compliance folder, the one she built, curated, updated through 7 CFOs and 3 platforms, showed 0 contributors. Like magic. Brent told legal, scrub her name from everything, especially anything client-facing. They nodded like good little yes men, where they'd just triggered the digital equivalent of a murder mystery. The body was gone, but the fingerprints were everywhere. But Susan didn't panic. Susan had protocols. See, when you've spent 10 years watching execs screw themselves into SEC subpoenas and IRS audits because they thought fine print was for nerds, you learn to keep a copy. Or 10. Her home NAS, a dusty black box nestled in a coat closet behind a broken Dyson, spun to life like an old warhorse. One click, and there it was. Every M and addendum, every contract variation, every redlined version she'd ever touched. All dated, all timestamped, all backed up weekly. And one folder in particular sat there like a loaded gun. Certifier Override Clause V12 Final for real docx. The kind of name you only give a file when you've revised it more times than your mortgage paperwork. This was from a deal 4 years ago, a cross-border acquisition that nearly collapsed because some genius tried to validate a data room using PDFs from a fax machine. That's when she wrote the clause. That's when legal approved it. And that's when it became boilerplate, tucked quietly into her own contract template library. Clause 9. Buried, boring, and entirely invisible to the kind of men who skim contracts like they skim Yelp reviews. Clause that required all data integrity certifications over $250 million to be personally attested by her, or someone explicitly appointed by her in writing. Not a department, not a role, her. Brent didn't know about it. Max sure as hell didn't, but Susan did. And now she had proof it still existed. She opened a blank page in her notebook, leather-bound, monogrammed, a gift from a vendor that Brent said looked too masculine for HR. The top, she wrote one word, timeline. Below that, signing date, October 3. Then she started jotting down names, lawyers, assistants, the junior staffer in finance who used to shadow her during audits and still texted her memes during budget season, the analyst who once cried in her office after Brent called him emotionally inefficient. These weren't colleagues, they were assets. She didn't call anyone, not yet. This wasn't a panic. This was a chessboard. Brent just moved his king without protecting the back rank. Out on LinkedIn, Brent posted a photo of Max standing in front of the company logo with the caption, "The future is now." Excited to announce Max D as our new operations lead, bringing vision, energy, and fresh eyes to our growth journey. Susan stared at it for a second, then saved the screenshot. Fresh eyes, she snorted. Fresh eyes don't mean shit if they can't read the bottom of a clause. Max hit the ground running, straight into a brick wall of his own incompetence. Within 2 weeks of Susan's exit, he was already bungling the due diligence prep like it was a high school group project, and he forgot to do his part. The buyer's team had requested full financials by EOD Monday. Max uploaded half-finished spreadsheets on Wednesday and blamed VPN lag. When they asked for audit trails, he sent PDFs of screenshots. Couldn't tell a clean ledger from a Chick-fil-A receipt. But damn, the kid had confidence. That loud, echoey, performative kind, the kind that fills silence with words like synergy funnel and data verticals, which mean absolutely nothing but sound impressive if you yell them in a room full of other clueless men nodding to save face. Every missed file was someone else's fault. First, it was Emma from Accounts Payable. She never trained me on invoice flow. It was Jared in Risk. He's gatekeeping the spreadsheets. One time, he even blamed the copier. Not the person using the copier, the machine. "This HP keeps distorting my tables," he muttered on a Zoom call, holding up a blurry printout like it had betrayed him personally. Brent, meanwhile, kept the charade alive in public. Every time someone raised a concern, he'd slap a smile on his face and belt out, "Give the kid a chance." Learning curve, folks. Behind closed doors, the facade was cracking. One night, during a late strategy call, someone forgot to hit mute while Brent was venting in his office. The entire call heard, "If he screws up the escrow report again, I'm gonna wrap this binder around his empty damn skull." Max didn't hear it, but the intern taking meeting notes did. She sent Susan a text that night. "You'd have loved the meltdown today. P.S. Max called an EBITDA report the vibes chart." Susan didn't reply. She just smiled, then pulled up her clause template again. It was the same one. The one she'd handcrafted with precision, forged in the chaos of a failed deal when she had to personally babysit 2 CFOs and a vomiting lawyer through a 72-hour compliance lockdown. Back then, Brent begged her to create a clause that eliminates uncertainty. So she did. She built the certifier's addendum with one goal in mind: never let amateurs touch high-stakes data again. And now she found out Max had reused it. An old colleague from compliance, Debbie, who owed Susan a favor after Susan helped her dodge a wrongful termination rumor, slid into her DMs with a message, "FYI, Max used your addendum." Like copy-pasted. Never even opened version history. Just dumped it in and rebranded it. "You sure?" Susan typed back, "I'm the one who sent it to the buyer's team. Saw your initials in the footer metadata." Thought it was weird, but Brent said she signed off before she left. Susan stared at the message for a long time, then clicked open her own copy. Footer check, last modified by S. Dorrance. Date, 2 years ago. Embedded clause, data certifications over $250M must be personally signed by S. Dorrance or her explicit named proxy. There was no proxy, and she sure as hell hadn't signed anything. She didn't feel angry, not anymore. What she felt was colder than that, precise. Like the moment a surgeon picks up a scalpel. The wound wasn't hers to feel anymore, it was theirs. In the office Slack, Max posted a gif of a rocket ship and typed, "Due diligence is almost done. Baby ye rocket. Susan saved that too." Labeled it, Exhibit A Hubris. The rain hit hard that morning, and ugly like it knew something was coming. Susan sat in her kitchen with a mug of coffee that had gone cold 40 minutes ago. She didn't drink it. She just stared at the steam curling up like it was drawing blueprints only she could read. Her cat, Sherlock, curled next to her on the windowsill, blinking slow like he knew she was about to do something irrevocable. She opened her laptop. Not the work one. Brent nuked that thing from orbit. This was her personal vault, triple encrypted, off-grid, synced to nothing. She clicked a folder labeled Binder Vault, and inside it sat 10 numbered folders, Legacy 1 through Legacy 10. Only one had a red tag next to it, Legacy 9. Inside, the original certifier's addendum, her language, her formatting, her clause, but that wasn't enough. She needed confirmation, a name, a source from inside who'd seen it live, sent it, touched it. Enter Molly Fisher, her old mentee from finance. Whip smart, grew up on food stamps and spreadsheets. Susan had taken her under wing when Brent once referred to her as that chick from community college. Molly now ran forecast and modeling for the executive team, and unlike Max, she knew how to read an addendum before attaching it to a $340 million contract. Susan typed, "You busy? Need to ask you something discreet." Molly responded within minutes, "For you, always. What's up?" Susan asked one question. "Did you use my certifier addendum? The one from Q321. There was a pause, then 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then came the answer, yes. Brent said it was already reviewed. Max asked me to attach it to the compliance binder. It's the version with your clause, right? Susan leaned back, closed her eyes. Yes, it was that version. She pulled up the metadata on her copy. Version history confirmed everything. Bedded clause. All financial data validations attached to this agreement are contingent upon attestation by S. Dorrance or a designated successor assigned in writing. Attestation is mandatory for deals valued at or exceeding $250 million USD. Not a boilerplate clause, not a departmental sign-off. Her name, her authority, and no one ever replaced it. No memo, no authorization letter, no board approval to override. It used her words like they were free, like she was a ghost they could quote without summoning. Susan stood up, cracked her neck, and flipped open the leather notebook again. She added Molly's name to the timeline, added the binder transfer date, marked it as confirmed clause activation. Then she picked up her phone and dialed, not a firm with TV ads, not a fire-breathing ambulance chaser. Just a quiet, vicious legal proxy she kept in her back pocket for years, kind of guy who read footnotes for fun and treated NDAs like religious texts. She didn't need to sue anyone, she needed silence. Paper trail verification. Metadata chain lock, he answered on the second ring. "Thought you retired," he said. "I did," she replied. "They didn't." She explained everything in 30 minutes. He didn't interrupt once. When she finished, he only asked one question. "Do you have proof they used it?" "I do. And let's see how fast Brent's team can read when the money's on fire." She sent him the file, then saved a copy to an encrypted flash drive labeled Doomsday. At Foresight Metrics, Max was recording another tick-tock in the break room, holding up a spreadsheet and saying, crunching numbers like a beast, "Y'all." Brent gave him a thumbs up on the way to the boardroom, totally unaware that the clause they'd blindly pasted was about to detonate like a landmine wired to Susan's signature. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need revenge porn or viral exposés. She had something better. She had the final say in the one clause that mattered. It started as a whisper, a polite question buried in a flurry of pre-signing logistics. The buyer's junior counsel flagged an inconsistency in one of the compliance attachments, a mismatched footer date, something small, something the average exec would brush off with a shrug and a chuckle. But these folks weren't average. They were sharks in suits, trained to smell blood in digital ink. And once they saw a drop, they bit. By the time Brent rolled into the 4th pre-signing alignment call, the buyer's side had a dozen questions, each more pointed than the last. Can you clarify the source of attestation for the Q2 revenue normalization? Why is the certifier's metadata timestamp older than the version ID? Who provided final authorization for the M and a certifier's addendum? Brent chuckled through them. That politician's smile glued to his face. jaw tight behind the forced cheer. "All covered under our internal integrity protocols," he said. Our compliance officer signed off. "All good there." One of the lawyers on the call, a narrow-faced woman with the voice of a librarian and the eyes of a sniper, didn't blink. "Please?" Brent fumbled his notes, then gestured to Max, who'd been scrolling Instagram on mute. Max froze like a deer hearing his own name on the PA system at TSA. Brent said. "That'd be our internal integrity officer, Susan Dorrance. Legacy approvals, obviously." There was a pause, a long, sharp silence. "Excuse me," the lawyer said. "Susan Dorrance is still the named authority." Brent forced a laugh. "It's just how the template was formatted. He was part of the transition team. But rest assured, it's all been managed internally since then. But the clause," the lawyer continued, "requires explicit written delegation from Miss Dorrance for any successor at a station. That was not included in the file packet." Brent blinked. Then he did the worst thing a man in his position could do. He bluffed. "That's just legalese. We've had verbal consensus across the executive group. It's standard. Totally standard." The other side of town, Susan sat in her cabin, laptop open, that same clause glowing on the screen like a loaded trap. She'd already verified the metadata chain with her legal proxy, who now had 2 signed affidavits from former staff confirming no such delegation was ever made. The clause hadn't just suggested she sign off, it required it. For deals above $250 million, her name was the legal fuse. Brent had just yanked the pin and smiled for the camera. Molly texted her that night. "They're asking questions." Brent is sweating. Max tried to claim he oversaw the language, but didn't even know what a ratified addendum was. Susan replied with 2 words, "It's time." Back in the boardroom, Brent summoned IT, compliance, legal, anyone he could scapegoat. He kept snapping his fingers like the problem was speed, not substance. "The signature is just ceremonial," muttered to no one in particular. "We don't need Susan's actual hand on it. That's just leftover structure." But the buyer's counsel didn't care about feelings. They cared about execution authority. The clause didn't say ceremonial, it said S, Dorrance. And there had been no proxy, no override, no memo. Susan's name was on the file. Her signature wasn't. And in legalese, that's not a rounding error, that's a ticking bomb. Out in the parking lot, Max paced while on the phone with a recruiter, whispering furiously about exploring other visionary opportunities. Susan closed her laptop, walked outside into the crisp air, and smiled. The fuse was lit. She didn't have to lift a finger now. They do the burning all by themselves. The call came at 9:42 p.m. Susan was sitting on the porch, wrapped in a flannel blanket with one hand resting on a glass of scotch she hadn't sipped yet. Crickets hummed in the trees. Phone lit up with a number she didn't recognize. No ID, no name, just the kind of raw 10 digits you only see when someone doesn't want to be remembered. She let it ring twice, then picked up, calm as a priest in a confession booth. "Miss Dorrance," the voice was clean, too clean, like someone trained to be forgettable. The kind of voice that worked in government or billion-dollar acquisitions. Neutral, practiced, designed to trigger nothing. "This is she," Susan said, steady, reaching out to confirm authorship of a specific clause. "It's related to an M and a certifier's addendum currently included in the Foresight Metrics compliance package. Specifically, the attestation clause under Section 9. She didn't blink. "You're calling on behalf of the buyer?" A pause. Then, "I'm not authorized to disclose engagement. We need to verify whether you personally attested to any data accuracy or certification packages for Foresight Metrics since your departure from the company." Susan stood up, walked into the cabin, and sat at her desk. She opened the file. The clause was right there, glaring in black and white. All financial validations must be certified by S. Dorrance or a successor explicitly appointed in writing by her. She clicked into the version history. Last edit, March 3, 2021. Author S. Dorrance. File path, local archive /legacy 9/final. No changes since. No proxy assigned. No signature appended. "No," she said calmly. "I have not attested to any M&A documents, financial validations, or data certifications for Foresight Metrics since the day they revoked my access. And prior to your removal, was any written proxy designation submitted?" "No," she repeated. No delegation, no transfer of authority. That clause was designed intentionally. "My name is there for a reason." The voice didn't thank her, just said, "Understood," and then after a beat, "Would you be willing to send metadata confirmation of your version file?" Susan already had the zip folder open. Inside, the clause, the document's full edit history, and the notarized verification from her legal proxy, confirming her sole authorship and absence of any official delegation. Clean. Untouched. "I'll send it within the hour," she said. The voice paused again. Then quieter. "Thank you, Miss Dorrance. We appreciate your precision." The line went dead. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Instead, she composed a new email with the subject line, Clause verification, Section 9 attestation authority attached. DocX file, TXT metadata pull. PDF notarized affidavit. PNG of Brent's press release announcing her retirement to advisory role. The body of the email, she typed one sentence. "For your records, no attestation from me has been made since March 24, 2023. The clause stands as written. She hit send. Back at Foresight Metrics HQ, Brent was hosting a pre-signing dinner at a steakhouse, blathering about legacy turns to future, while Max tried to charm the buyer's analyst by showing him his personal NFT portfolio on his phone. None of them knew the clock was already running out. None of them realized that, as of 10:03 p.m., the buyer's legal team had locked the deal binder for review, and the one signature they needed was sitting in a lakeside cabin in Vermont, sipping scotch, watching the fire pit crackle, not moving an inch. There was nothing left to say. Susan didn't need to shout. She didn't need to post receipts online. She didn't need revenge. She had timestamps. Timestamps don't lie. The signing room was all pomp and smugness. A rented marble monstrosity in a downtown high-rise with skyline views, espresso stations, and centerpieces that screamed we spent the budget because we could. The table stretched too long, like it was built for royalty, and at the head sat Brent in a custom blazer, his tie the color of guilt and bad decisions. Max flanked him, bouncing in his seat like a golden retriever who just discovered how mirrors work. Champagne bottles sweated in silver buckets. Glasses clinked. The buyer's team, polished and poised, filtered in with leather portfolios and smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Everything was staged. Everyone was posturing. You could smell the money in the room. Max took it all in like it was his personal coronation. "This," he grinned, slapping the buyer's junior assistant on the back, "is what efficiency looks like. We streamlined everything. Compliance, data, sign-offs, boom, done. I even optimized the addendum stack personally." The assistant blinked. "You optimized the what?" Max winked like he was giving away state secrets. "The certifier doc. Used the legacy format. Real airtight stuff. Didn't need to reinvent the wheel, right?" Across the table, the buyer's lead counsel, an older man with a brutal watch and an expression that belonged in a morgue, cracked open the final contract binder. He flipped past the celebratory photo insert, ignored the welcome letter, and landed on the addendum packet with the ease of a man who'd done this dance 1,000 times. His pen hovered over the signature line, then stopped. He flipped back, then forward again. His face didn't move, but something in his posture shifted, a tiny hitch, like a mechanic hearing the engine rattle for the first time. He said softly. No one heard him. Brent was busy raising his glass. To legacy and leadership, he beamed, nodding at Max. To family, keeping the mission alive. The lawyer turned the page again. Max leaned closer to the assistant and whispered, "He's just being thorough. You know how lawyers are." But the flipping didn't stop. The counsel placed the pen down, deliberate. Like it weighed more than it did. He cleared his throat. "Can someone confirm," he said, voice crisp, "executed the M and a certifier's addendum included in this packet?" Brent glanced up mid-toast, blinking. "Sorry, say again." The lawyer didn't look at him. He tapped the clause. "This addendum, specifically Section 9, references an attestation requirement. It names an individual, S. Dorrance, as the sole certifier for data validation in deals exceeding $250 million. I'd like confirmation on whether this was executed in accordance with that stipulation." Max laughed. "Yeah, that's just boilerplate. We used her format, old doc, you know, templates. The data was reviewed internally." The buyer's counsel turned his eyes toward Max, the kind of stare that withers plants and careers alike. "Respectfully," he said, "this is not boilerplate. This clause creates legal exposure if improperly certified. And it doesn't say role or department. Names a person. Is Miss Dorrance present today?" Silence crept into the room like a gas leak. Quiet, deadly. Brent's smile sagged. "No," he said. She's no longer with the company. Did she authorize a successor?" the lawyer asked. "In writing?" Brent opened his mouth, then closed it. Max glanced down at his phone, suddenly realizing he hadn't memorized a single detail past the buzzwords. The assistants slowly slid their chair back from the table. Buyer's CFO leaned over to whisper something into the lead attorney's ear. Two others on the buyer's side began quietly sifting through their own binders, flipping to appendices like they'd rehearsed it. Max tried to laugh again, a weak, breathy chuckle that died midair. "It's fine," he said, voice cracking. We're just being extra safe, right?" The lawyer didn't answer. He just closed the binder, rested both hands on the cover, and said nothing. The unraveling had begun, but the fall was still to come. The room dropped 10 degrees the moment the binder slid across the table. Not flung, not shoved, slid, slow and deliberate, like a weapon placed on velvet. The buyer's lead counsel turned the page toward his CEO with the kind of reverence reserved for bad news and last rites. His finger landed precisely under a single sentence. And for a moment, the entire deal, $340 million in valuation, 3 years of prep, 2 months of due diligence, hinged on a few black words in 12-point font. Data integrity certification, the line read, must be executed by S. Dorrance or her designated successor in writing. The buyer's CEO leaned in, reading it once. Then again, his brow furrowed, lips parted slightly, as if waiting for the rest of the sentence to deliver a punchline. But there wasn't one. Just that cold, final period. Brent, across the table, finally stopped talking. His grin fell apart in stages. First the mouth, then the jaw, then the color from his cheeks. It was like watching a sinkhole eat a house, slow, surreal, but inevitable. "Wait," Brent said, suddenly breathless. "That's just..." The buyer's CEO raised a hand. "Don't," he whispered. Then quieter, almost reverent, "My God, what have you done?" The sound of the pen dropping echoed. Small, sharp, loud in the silence that followed. The cameras, set up by the PR team to capture the signing moment, the handshakes, the staged smiles, were discreetly powered off by an assistant who'd seen enough train wrecks to know when to stop rolling. Max looked from Brent to the CEO to the lawyer, his face blank with the kind of dawning horror you only get when you realize you were handed a live grenade instead of spotlight. I thought it was standard," he muttered. "The file was in the shared folder. We always used that version." Buyer's lawyer turned to him, face devoid of emotion. "You used her clause," he said flatly. Max blinked. "But I optimized it." "You used her clause," the lawyer repeated, "with her name, with her authority, without her signature, and without a valid delegation." The buyer's CFO closed her laptop and pushed it aside. The head of investor relations quietly stood and exited the room. Brent tried to recover. "Okay, let's all calm down. It's a minor formality. We can just add a retroactive memo." "Maybe Susan can. She has already confirmed she hasn't signed off," the lawyer cut in. "And that no delegation was issued. You spoke to her." "No," the lawyer said. "She didn't need to speak. She sent timestamps." Max, panicking now, looked at Brent like a child waiting for his dad to fix it. Brent, for the first time since this charade began, looked small, not weak, small. The buyer's CEO stood slowly, one hand on the binder, other on his phone. "We're not signing anything until this is resolved," he said. "And by resolved, I mean certified. By the woman who owns that clause." Brent swallowed, his voice cracked. She's not with us anymore." The CEO gave him a look that could strip paint. "Then the liability's yours, all of it." Someone across the room whispered, "Clause 9. That's the bomb clause." The pen lay on the table, untouched, useless. $340 million had just slammed into a single sentence like a bird into glass. And our quiet lakeside, cabin far from the wreckage, Susan stirred cream into her coffee with the calm of a woman who knew exactly which floorboard would break and waited for them to step on it. The room didn't explode. It evaporated. 1 minute it was full of laughter and polished shoes and carefully choreographed synergy. The next was dead air and throat clearing, and men realizing they just steered a $340 million ship into a reef made of hubris and fine print. The buyer's legal team went into a huddle like a football team calling an audible in the red zone. Phones came out. Pages flipped. Someone opened a laptop and began quietly typing, eyes wide. Across the table, Brent sat frozen. Richta's smile stretched across his face like someone had glued it there before abandoning the job. "We'll need to reschedule," the lead counsel finally said. "Pending data certification." Brent tried to play it off. Right, absolutely. We just need to get someone in compliance to reattest. No big deal." The buyer's CEO didn't move. He didn't blink. He just spoke. "It's not someone. It's the clause holder. And from what I'm reading, that clause only recognizes Susan Dorrance." Brent coughed. We removed her last quarter." The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was deadly. The The kind of silence that follows a courtroom verdict or a failed parachute deployment. A total absence of hope. "You fired the clause holder," the CEO repeated, each word an indictment. Brent opened his mouth, closed it. Max, pale and useless beside him, looked like he was trying to shrink through his chair and into the carpet. The buyer's counsel folded their hands. "Then the liability's on you. The clause is binding. She owns the certifier's signature." No signature, no deal. A few chairs scraped back. A camera operator quietly began packing up the unused gear. One of the buyer's board members simply stood and walked to the window, phone to his ear already whispering, "Put the backup deal back on the table." Seriously. Yes, it's that bad? Brent was still muttering something, probably trying to spitball a workaround or fake some executive maneuver, but no one was listening anymore. The binder was closed. The champagne stayed corked. The signing pen lay in its velvet case, untouched, useless, like the men who brought it here. That night, while Brent drafted a groveling email filled with phrases like unexpected oversight and rapid resolution, a different kind of message was being written 200 miles away. Susan sat on the porch of her lakeside cabin, wrapped in that same flannel blanket, tea steeping beside her. She didn't look triumphant. She didn't look smug. She looked still, like a statue. Like someone who built the scaffolding, watched them paint over it, and simply waited for the moment it all collapsed. Her phone buzzed. It was her legal proxy. Text message, simple and clean. "Buyer wants to retain you as compliance lead. Name your terms." She didn't respond right away. She just looked out at the water, steam curling from her mug, the wind brushing through pine trees like applause from ghosts. There was no speech, no revenge montage, no gloating social media post. Because Susan knew what Brent never would. You don't get to erase a foundation without the whole building feeling it collapse. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.